Corbin Hostler, and this is Hardened Scales Affinity. Um, at least we're calling it Affinity. It's sort of like an Affinity deck. So this top 16 to the SCG Classic last weekend. It's also had some success online, and I've sort of taken those lists and come around to this. I don't think I changed much, if anything. So the point of our deck, we're calling it Affinity because you see a lot of Affinity staples. You have Mox Opals, Memnites, Ornithopters, your Overseals, Arcbound Ravagers, Springleaf Drums, right? So in a lot of ways, it's an Affinity deck. But rather than your payoff cards being Cranial Plating and Master of Ethereum and stuff like that, what this deck does is it plays Hardened Scales, Winding Constrictor, and then a couple other artifacts that are pretty good with those, Hangerback Walker and Walking Ballista. And the reason, we call it Affinity is because we share all these cards, but the reality is we're not trying to play the Affinity game plan. Arcbound Ravager, Steel Overseal just happen to be incredible with Hardened Scales and Winding Constrictors. So, instead of putting one counter in each of your things, you'd put two. Instead of this coming into play with one counter on it, it comes in with two. Same with the Arcbound Worker, which is why you play them. And then when you modular them and you get to move their 1/1 counters, you also get to move additional 1/1 counters, which when your payoff cards are Hangerback Walker and Walking Ballista, it's pretty good because you either get a giant Walking Ballista or you get a giant Hangerback Walker that makes a bunch of Thopters when it goes down. And in a nutshell, really, that's the deck. Now, you'll see the one Rite of Passage, and the reason is it's actually an infinite combo, if a convoluted one that won't come up very often. So if you have two of these effects out, rather, some combination of two Hardened Scales or Winding Constrictors and a Rite of Passage and Walking Ballista, if you start with a 3/3 Walking Ballista, which, because you have those cards, you will, you can remove one counter, it'll go down to two counters, and you can ping itself. That will trigger the Rite of Passage, which would put one counter on it. But because of our two effects, it'll put two counters on it, and then three counters, making it, instead of a 2/2 with one damage on it, it becomes a 5/5 with one damage on it. You can then remove another to make it a 4/4 and put two damage on it, which then bumps it up three more to a 7/7, etc. And you keep going until it has, an arbitrary large number of counters, and then you kill them with it. So it's actually a really sweet, as you're playing your one of here, it's kind of sweet. And there's also games where they try to kill your Walking Ballista, and pinging them for one might not do much, but hey, maybe you can ping like a 2/2 Arcbound Worker or something, you get an additional counter on it, or ideally Hangerback, right? So that's the deck. It's pretty fun. It's, it had some success, so it's got something going for it, even if it looks a little strange on its face. So moving over to the sideboard, a lot of stuff you expect. Thoughtseize for combos, Grafdigger's Cage for graveyard decks, Natural State to fight against Stony Silence, Fatal Push for, when you need to kill a couple small creatures, Edge Champions for when you need protection, Death Shadow sort of matchups. And then Pia's Revolution, this is an interesting one that I'm not sure about, but it's good in the grindy matchups because if they're trying to lightning bolt all your stuff, it actually makes them pay a pretty high cost for that, especially if, you're sort of going off with Ravagers. So we'll see how it goes. The deck seems pretty interesting. I like that it, has some new cards in it, and it has success. I mean, at least top 16 day tournament. So that's, proof that you can definitely play this version of Affinity, if you want to call it that, and have some success with it. So it seems like a lot of fun. Let's give it a shot and see how it goes.